are still more or less at the beginning of this second chapter, and this is dedicated primarily to the Sphira of Keser. He's speaking about 8 kind of sub-qualities of Keser which we can emulate, and we're up to number 5. Number 5 is on page Lamed Daled, towards the bottom. If in the previous section, he was talking about emulating the aspect of Keser in regards to hearing, so here is going to be in connection with seeing. So, Hamishis Einav. The 5th category is emulating the Keser insofar as it relates to our eyes. Lo yistakel behen klal b'shum davar megune. A person should not look with his eyes at anything which is improper. It's referring to shmiras einayim, guarding your eyes from seeing things which are improper. Whether it be somebody transgressing, whether it be some form of idolatry, whether it be something which is viewed as being immoral or improper, incorrect. On a more subtle level, it would apply perhaps even to seeing something which compromises another person. Maybe another person's in some compromising situation, and a person, should avoid seeing them in this situation. For example, something happens to somebody, and they're very embarrassed, just about it happening to them. Certainly, if they see you looking at them, they're going to be more embarrassed as a result of that. You should look away in order to spare them whatever embarrassment they would have by knowing that you're looking at them. But I would say, even if the person doesn't and could not know that you saw, but you just happen to see them in a compromising, embarrassing situation, I personally try not to look. Why look? I'll give you even a simple example. It might seem funny to you, but say somebody's running to catch a bus, and they're like running hysterically because they really got to get the bus. It's the last one. It's really urgent, and they've got packages and clothing, and everything's just like flying, and they're running, and they're flying, and they're dropping things. I try not to look at that.
That's the best.
So on the one hand, you're like, you can stand by and enjoy the humor of it.
Well, it's not like you're even looking at them, but like somebody running with a backpack is always funny,
Yeah.
Swing it around and everything.
Perfect. So personally, I try to avoid looking at that. Why? Because in my mind, that's an embarrassing way to look. And the person is only doing that because they feel the utmost urge and they're willing to subject themselves to being in that kind of embarrassing, funny kind of position because it's very important. So I don't want to take advantage of whatever urgency they have, which causes them to compromise their principles, to do that. Yeah, when I wouldn't want to be there and I wouldn't want people to look at me if I had to do that, so I look away.
But maybe they don't feel that shame. So like, why are you imposing?
You're still like
that's right.
Getting enjoyment off somebody's expense.
But you can't. You could look at it that way, but you could also look at it like they don't care. So why should I feel? Maybe you can learn to like take a lesson from it. Like maybe. I don't know.
Yes, I agree. That the person himself or herself might not even feel that there's an. So I'm less talking about that than a scenario where I would assume most people, this maybe not this example, but I'm talking about examples where most people would feel like I wouldn't want to be in that spot. So I try not to look at people who are in a situation which I feel like I wouldn't want to be there if it was myself, and I certainly wouldn't want people to look at me if I'm there, and therefore I try not to look, even if the person is not even aware that I'm looking or not. Just because, this is perhaps beyond what he's talking about here. I'm just, going from the more obvious to the less obvious. What?
That's the best example.
What?
No, it's so relevant. Like you see that all the time.
The bus example. Yeah.
But shouldn't you also is looking away kind of denying responsibility of maybe you should say something to the bus driver, maybe you should.
Oh, if you could help, that's a different story. Sure, if you can help, then you should help. I'm not referring to that. I'm not referring about. I give an example.
Say if you're across the street and
you
can't do anything.
Yeah. There's something you can do about it. So you're gonna look and just chuckle. Suppose he's going by a bus, and there are a lot of people coming in and out in the shuffle, and everybody's in a rush to get on and off before the driver decides sometime in Israel arbitrarily to take off before it's time. And the woman starts to get off the bus, and she's got the baby carriage. Yeah. So she's obviously in a bind because she's got bags and things, whatever. She's by herself, and nobody's helping her, and you happen to be by, right? There's nobody to help. So there would be like your scenario, right? Rather than not look and walk away when she needs help, right? Extend your hand and give a helping hand. Now, doing so might put you in a potentially compromising situation because she's above and you're below and you're holding like this, and and you can't maybe entirely look away because there's a baby and other people around. You have to make sure that you don't do anything would end up being dangerous. So a person have to be careful. And one, regarding that scenario, the Gemara says that the Gemara discusses what's called a chasid shote. So somebody who refrains from saving a woman from drowning because he doesn't want to jump in and hold her body in order to save her because of the So that the Gemara says that's a chasid shote. I mean, you have to save the woman's life, even if it means taking hold of her body and coming into close bodily contact and whatever else might touch. In the act of saving her, your mind certainly shouldn't be on that. It should be on the act of saving her. You're going to let her. So the same thing here. The woman's, suffering trying to get off the bus like this, and people are knocking back way or the other, and you see that nobody's particularly helping. So that would be, in my mind, a situation of a chasid shote. You should not look away and go on, but lend a helping hand and put your hands where they should be, and keep your eyes where they shouldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in this like exact situation around here where I saw a woman struggling with a baby carriage.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that I particularly worry. Well, what am I going to see? It's more like how will she react if this young male is helping her out. So I don't know what the protocol is exactly.
Yeah. So that's very good of you. In other words, even if you don't particularly have the sensitivities, you're sensitive to the fact that she might.
Right.
And that's good that you have the sensitivities in that situation. It might be, perhaps appropriate, and sometimes that's kind of what I do is, ask, can I help you? More often than not, she'll say no, but often that's because she's demurring and she's embarrassed or she's a bit, but you can tell sometimes if she really wants to help. So you can kind of say, are you sure? And then try, and if she insists, no, please don't. So then I don't. But if she doesn't insist, no, then I help. When I think it's important that I help. Yeah.
Does this extend to the animal kingdom as well? If you see a lion murdering another animal, or an animal, or having sexual relations at a zoo, like you're walking by.
Oh, yeah. I lost the larger picture. Yeah, that's true. For example, and that touches a little bit on what we spoke about, I think, yesterday. Maybe watching films or documentaries that have violence or gory type of stuff, and it is part of the natural world. It's part of God's creation, but it doesn't mean to say that we have to look at it per se. And if it's pernicious or if it's vicious and bloody and gory and things like that,
even. Amongst the
I'm saying it's a natural
violence,
thing.
Like when you watch a lion, chase down like an antelope or something and kill it. But that's like I don't know. I've never even associated it with like some sort of like cruelty or violence. It's the
natural.
Kingdom. Yeah, and we also do things that are natural, so to speak, but we like elevate them and So to me, it seems like it's. When you watch humans behave in that way, it's on a different level. When you watch animals who supposedly don't have a nefesh or a neshama, it like loses its kind of cruelty. It's watching, I don't know. To me, it's like something beautiful. Something like
lions are beautiful and gazelles are beautiful, but when a lion devours a gazelle,
it's part of nature. Like, it's
it's
beautiful
part of
cycle of life. I don't know. That's the way I take it. It's
a
beautiful dance that they do.
Good lunch.
I don't know. I imagine which of the two partners I'd rather be.
Yeah.
The one who's getting his feet stepped on by the other partner probably is not enjoying that dance too much. But but look, a lot of these documentaries, they intend to do it in a very shocking way. It's alarming, and they'll show it again and again, and from a closer view. Even in these documentaries, they make a whole So if the point is to focus on it. By the way, I saw a documentary once, side note documentaries, where it was amazing. You talk about the lion, pouncing on the unsuspecting gazelle, and tearing its limbs apart and everything like that. I saw a documentary which showed how many misses they actually have before that hit. They miss and 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 they miss. They only get like one hit a day, 2 hits a day. They miss many more times than they hit.
You mean like the lion misses?
Yeah, the lion
the
misses. No, the lion misses.
Yeah.
You see them. It's like they run after it and they tire out. They run after it and they tire out. They run after it, outmaneuvers it. They run after it and it trips up.
They're culling the herd. They get the weakest of the herd.
Yeah, and even the weakest of the herd, they don't get. It's not like they, It's not like they can just pick a gazelle like we pick a fruit off a tree. It's not easy. It's not an easy job, and the gazelles run faster than they do. And they and they're much more agile. But that's just a side point. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, that's like.
So that documentary I enjoyed because you didn't really see the gore. What you saw was the frustrated lion keep missing. Sorry,
I don't know. It's not gory.
So I was like, roaring for the underdog, and like, oh yeah, he got away. Yeah, good, he got away. But people take this to the point of refraining from looking at non-kosher animals.
Altogether, you can't look at a pig?
Not that you can't. I said people extend this to the point of refraining from looking at non-kosher animals. Looking at impure, unholy things, even though, again, it's part of the natural world of creation.
Have you seen the Planet Earth series?
I think so, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, I think Planet of Earth, but I think they showed the seasons and the Alps, the mountains and jungle regions.
There is a lot of hunting. There's a lot of predator prey, type thing being shown. But I mean, it's just so massive.
Think about it this way. I don't know to what extent what I'm going to say is instructive, but it comes to mind to suggest to think about it this way. How would a child react to seeing it? Right? Now, of course, we're adults and we're not children, and we have to be sophisticated and not simple. But to illustrate the point, right, think about how would a child look at it. And if we want to maintain a certain degree of innocence and purity, then I think it would behoove us to think about whether we would want children to look at this and how a child's looking at this would affect him. And then decide whether we really want to look at it or not. To illustrate the point. Yeah? And I think that's somewhat of a fair indication. What were you going to say, Ben?
Oh, just an example I was going to bring up. That's like every day if you have a dog, you walk your dog goes to the bathroom. Like you're not supposed to look at it. It goes to the bathroom.
I personally would refrain from looking at that.
But then you'd still have to clean it up, right? You can't leave it.
I wouldn't have a dog in the first place.
Exactly.
Because I wouldn't want to clean it up.
Exactly.
But yes, if I had, I was at home visiting my family, about a year ago, and my father, they have a dog, and I had to walk the dog in the morning, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy having to wait on the dog while it takes care of his needs. I didn't enjoy having to be there when
let's go.
Yeah, doing its thing, and I tried to look away, and then before you know it, the dogs start doing the don't talk about dance, a little sniff dance, and I wasn't.
Dog, that's what they do. I mean,
yeah, but I didn't want to look at
dog.
it. Yeah, that's fine, but I personally prefer not to look at it, and I certainly didn't want to be around where what the dog did its thing. But it's not that it's prohibited. It's not that it's prohibited. But
you should guard your eyes from improper.
Yeah, it's viewed as being something which can negatively affect a person, seeing it, smelling things, seeing things, hearing things. Yeah. So they said that the three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil, something like that.
Speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil.
Yeah.
Who's the rabbi who trained his eyes to never wander from his? Is that I heard?
Never to his mind wander from where?
What's that?
His eyes never wandered from what?
He never used his eyes in a direction that his head wasn't looking. So he always looked straight. So if he needed to look somewhere, he would go like that, so he can disguise like where he was looking.
So he could disguise?
So he could not.
Could not disguise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always looked straight.
I never heard of that. That's very
Head,
interesting.
No
Yeah.
matter where. He trained his eyes to never wander, basically.
Really? So the eye should always be in a straight line. And if he's going to look at something, he's going to have to kind of make the effort to move his head. Yeah. The Gemara says that, yes, a person should not look at animals copulating. Birds or cats or animals copulating. A person should not look at that. It's natural, but you shouldn't look at it. Yeah. His eyes should not look at things which are improper. For example, in the different kind of situations that we discussed. Umnam tihiyeno tomid pekuchois lahashgiach ulerachem alehum lolim kefi koichoi. But rather, his eyes should always be open and attentive to paying attention to be merciful and take care of the needs of the needy according to his ability. So not to look at something improper, but not to close your eyes from the world. So that you should be aware of people's needs and fulfill them to the best of your ability. So that's kind of like the tightrope. Sometimes a person might be in a compromising situation, or whatever that might be, where it would be the type of situation where you really, like I'm saying, should not look at. On the other hand, if you don't look at it, then you won't be positioned to help the person in their time of need, which was Ben's point. So that's why I think a person has to try and walk this, balance of, not being overly aware of what's going on, but be aware enough that you can help people if and when they need it. Another example of this is what we spoke about before is like cabs. Sometimes I'm speaking, as a man, being aware of a woman's needing help and whether you should help her or not. And so, a woman comes out of the cab and she's got 3 little children and she's got to get her baby carriage out of the trunk, and the cab driver's stopped in the middle of the road, not at the side of the road as they often do, and she's got to take care of her kids over here and make sure they don't wander in the street, and she's got the infant in her arm, and she's got to get the trunk open and pull out the thing, and she's got to open up the carriage, and meanwhile she's telling her kids to stay off the street and making sure she doesn't get hit by her car herself. Happens all the time, right? It's crazy. Why doesn't the cab driver pull aside in a safe place, get himself out of the car and help her? But he's sitting there on his cell phone or smoking a cigarette or messing around with his radio, So that's another situation where a person should try and make himself available to help the woman if she needs help. You could shout at the cab driver. You could do that. But that probably wouldn't work. In the meantime, she's struggling through the situation. By the time, you say something to him, he says back, and you get an argument, and then, it's already too late. So what immediately needs to be done is that she very likely could benefit from some help. Yeah. So if I'm in that situation, as in the previous situation regarding like coming off the bus with the baby carriage, if there's let's say a young woman who's nearby, I might say to him, she's not noticing, maybe you should help her rather than doing it myself. Because the woman probably also feel more comfortable with the girl helping her, like you said, regarding her sensitivities, than my helping. But if there's no one around that I think would help, then those are situations where you should show alacrity and willingness to help. But that would be perfectly fine if you see, a young woman, whatever, it doesn't seem that she's not in a rush anywhere. You could say, I would certainly do that. I think, why don't you go help her, and go on. But or help myself. Ukeshire betzaras oni lo yatzim einav klal. When he becomes aware of the suffering of a poor person, he should not close his eyes at all. I think the Gemara says somewhere that a person who is oitzim einav litzorche ani closes his eyes when he's presented with the needs of a poor person. That's ki'ilu aved avodah zara. It's like he serves idols. I think that's what the teaching of the sages is, which means closing your eyes when a person needs help is even worse than stealing. It's like avodah zarah. It's like idol worship. I don't know why the Gemara makes this comparison. Maybe because he's putting his needs before that of the others, or maybe the idea is this person needs help, and it obviously must be talking about where I have the ability to help and I choose not to, because if I don't have the ability to help, how can I be held accountable? Right? So it must be talking about a case where the person has the ability to help and he closes his eyes and he doesn't help. That might be like idolatry, because kind of what it's saying is, who are you, if you have the ability to help, to decide not to? Whatever you have, whatever resources you have at your disposal to help that person, were given to you by God. So if you're not using him in the way that God would want you to use them, so that's like idolatry. You're like denouncing God and claiming yourself to be the custodian of these resources. Yeah, and maybe that's why it's considered to be like idolatry. But in any case, you see from here how serious it is to kind of turn a blind eye from somebody in need. Sometimes you have to be careful. If you don't turn your head, you could get a blind eye. For example, if you give somebody only like 10 agarot, they're likely to throw it back at you. Make sure you don't get caught in your eye. Yeah, that's another, that's another problem. Giving charity in amounts that people don't appreciate. Like, they're not good. They throws it back at you. Yeah. This is what I have. I have nothing else. Would you like this? If yes, fine. If not, try and get on the bus, with 10 agarot less than you need. The bus driver won't let you on. Yeah? He's not going to take $3.90 if it's 4. So 10 agarot is also worth something. But if you don't want it, that's fine. I'll keep it in my pocket. I'd rather ask the person if he wants it rather than give it and have it thrown back at me. But in any case, even if you don't have money, you can still help a person with your resources, right? Help a person carry the bag, right? Or help the person cross the street, or help the person do X, Y, or Z. So, so the point is, therefore, that a person should not blind himself from the needs of others at all. He should contemplate regarding him, according to his abilities, and stir up mercy for this person. Vis-a-vis heaven, meaning pray for this person, and also vis-a-vis other people, interceding with other people on this person's behalf. If you can, do what you can to help the person. Pray for him and do what you can to help him. I'm collecting money for this and that and the other, X, Y, and Z. Yeah. I don't, I'm sorry, I don't have any money, but insofar as a bracha, is worth something, I'd be more than happy to give you a bracha, that Hashem should help you, and X, Y, and that you should have plenty to help you and console you, and so forth and so on. Exactly, yeah. And Chazal say, regarding Yehuda, I believe it says in the Torah, Loiven shinayim micholav, that his teeth will be very white because of the abundance of milk that he has in his property. His teeth will become white with milk. And Chazal explained that to mean, another additional meaning as well is, Loiven shinayim micholav kol malbin shinov the oni ki'ilu mashkeu chalav, something like that. That somebody who shows his pearly whites to a poor person, it's as if he gives him a glass of milk. Loiven shinaim, showing the white of your teeth by smiling, is better, worth more than chalav, than actually giving him, right, some material benefit. And of course, it's talking about when a person has, shows sincere empathy for somebody, even if you're not able to materially alleviate their suffering, but giving them a genuine smile, showing that you really care, or giving them words of consolation, or just lending a listening ear, right, can be more helpful and beneficial sometimes than actually giving the person money. Sometimes, people come to collect for money, or they stand up in shul and they kind of make an announcement that, lo aleinu, the mother's sick and the father is handicapped and the child has cancer and the other one has this, and they go through this. But the people they have these heartrending stories, and they're saying this to explain why they're collecting money, but people will either not listen, or they might just give the person something and run along without hearing the whole speech, but everybody's in a rush, but this person feels a need to explain in greater detail than perhaps I have the patience to listen to. But thank God he's the one who's speaking and me who's the one who's listening. So if I'm not in a rush, couldn't I at least do him the service of listening to him? Like trying to get eye contact with him, right? Empathizing with him and then letting him finish another 10 seconds with what he wants to say and then give him the money? The poor guy, but we could become calloused to that. We become calloused. People up there airing their suffering in front of the community. Can you imagine how horrible that must be? What a person must come to in order to be in a situation where they can get themselves to stand up like that and tell everybody about all the difficulties and the sufferings that they have. And people just take it so lightly, They take a shekel and they run on. You get the point. I think we can try and work on showing a little more patience, a little more empathy for people suffering and wait out the extra 5 seconds, the extra 10 seconds, and let him finish what he's saying. And I think that the empathy that he feels that people have, even if they don't give up money, will still give him something. Yeah, what were you going to say?
What if you're dealing with, you come to the conclusion pretty quick that you're dealing with a crazy person? Is there a certain considerations you should
in terms of what? We're talking about in terms of charity?
In terms of respect or trying to
help the person?
Help the person or whatever. You know for sure they're out of their mind.
And they really don't need help, or they do? I mean, even if they're out of their mind, even if they're a crazy person, he might still need help.
They seem to be getting along, but they're basically harassing you, or not harassing you, but I don't know. They're seeking your attention.
So they need attention.
It's a test.
It's a very difficult test.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, because the more attention, because they need attention. Part of their needing attention is probably because they're not mentally healthy. They crave the attention. So now that you're one of the few that gives it, they're going to turn all of their desire for attention on you. And now what you think would have been a nice example of giving is actually making a prey to this. And if it's a situation where doing that is going to cause you to become plagued by this person now, again and again and again, it's not just a one-off thing. So of course you have to think responsibly and try and avoid a situation where it could significantly harm you or the people who are dependent on you. And if you become a sounding board for this person who's always seeking you out and speaking to you about all of these things, and as a result of that, you're not working properly, you're not learning properly, you're not treating your wife and your children properly. So, of course, you have to draw the line somewhere. But if you happen to be at the bus stop, yeah, and you're passing the time anyway, and there's some guy there who starts, chiming away in your ear about this, that, and the other. So, I guess what?
It's the worst.
Yeah, I keep hitting the nail on the head every time, right?
It's the worst.
Yeah. So, I personally, I guess I'm just a sucker, but
When your bus comes, do you get on or do you
yeah.
finish the story?
No, I get on. I get on.
Get on and pray for the bus to come a little faster.
Yeah, and hope that he doesn't have to take that bus. Yeah. But in the meantime, without giving him my name and my number, spending 5 minutes to hear the guy and maybe show him a little empathy and maybe exchange some human contact with a person who might be ostracized because of his situation from many other people. So, I don't know, like I said, my heart goes out for these people, and I try and give them at least a little bit of recognition. Most people would rather not give the person any recognition, and if he started talking to them at the bus stop, they would go to the next bus stop. or they'd get out of the bus stop and stand aside. They want to get away from the person.
The hardest people for me to give money to are people that are very insistent. They don't see it as tzedakah. They don't see it as charity. They kind of feel almost like entitled. They'll walk up to you and be like, as if you owe them.
Enabling you to fulfill your obligation.
Yeah.
I'm doing you a favor.
Right, I'm doing you a favor by letting you do a mitzvah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that nevertheless, it's still a mitzvah, but it's harder to do it.
Yeah.
Because
since it's harder to do, it makes it more of a mitzvah.
Yeah, right. That's true. But give it to somebody that you...
Unless
your perception at that moment is that person is undeserving because they feel entitled to your
Yeah.
That doesn't make them any in reality, it doesn't make them any less deserving.
Right, or at least that's not the criteria, right, for determining whether they're deserving or not. But that being said, of course, the larger amounts of charity should be reserved for people who are normal and maybe that's not the right criteria.
Ask humbly.
It's just that for people who are going to use the money responsibly, that they need it and they're going to use it responsibly. So.
Does their sense of appreciation have anything to do with it?
No, I don't think so.
A crazy person doesn't have the I guess the wherewithal to appreciate what they're being given versus a family who really needs the money, and then even if they're not appreciating you, but if they're appreciative of
I don't think that's the factor. Okay. It's the need. Even if he doesn't appreciate it, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have the need. But these would be then different types of scenarios where we are keeping our eyes out for other people's needs and fulfilling them not only monetarily, but with any of the resources that we might have. And of course it has to be qualified with taking all the necessary precautions from exposing oneself to harm. But by and large, it's really more a matter of just suffering the annoyance and or the aggravation. And I think that we could all benefit from being, more patient and more willing to accept the annoyance and the aggravation, to give these, needy people, what they're asking for, within reason, more often, and we can easily kind of justify becoming callous for the different kind of reservations that we're discussing here. The person doesn't appreciate it, or the person's not normal, or the person's become a nuisance, and so we say, better not to give anything than to give under those scenarios. But that's really not necessarily the right thing to do. And when we ask of God, and expect of God, demand of God, present God with the opportunity of giving us, right, which is definitely the approach we take with God all the time. If He responded to us the way we respond to others, so we'd be in the gutter long ago. Yeah, because we're self-centered, we're demanding, we're egotistical, we ask for things that we don't need and in quantities that we don't need, and we're impatient when we don't get it in time or enough, and we throw it back at Him. Yeah, right. All of those things that people do to us that we've been talking about, we do to Hashem. And God, nevertheless, takes care of all of our needs, despite the fact that we act this way. So if we're talking about emulating God, right, we should not refrain for these reasons from sharing what He gives to us anyway. It's not even ours. Thinking about how we got it. You might be in the middle of prayer, either in shul or at the kotel. You're diving. All of a sudden, you realize somebody's just pushed into you, and you see this hand right there in front of you. You become so indignant. What? Doesn't he realize I'm in the middle of davening? I was talking to the creator of the world, and this dirty, foul street person comes bumping into me and stretches his hand in front of my face to give him. What lack of tact, This struggle. And then this bad smell comes out. God. You're in the middle of the Amida, you can't do anything, you can't talk, you can't move your feet, and he's like pressing you like this.
Yeah, but you're missing the entire point of what you're davening in the first place. You've forgotten the whole point. If you can't give tzedakah at that moment,
yeah,
you've completely missed the boat.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sometimes, I've thought to myself, stop for a minute. What are you being indignant about? The fact this person interrupted your prayer, and in such a rude way, in such a disheveled, unpresentable way? What were you thinking about just before he bumped into you? Can you remember? More often than not, you can't, because you didn't even think about what you were praying. You become indignant over the fact that he interrupted you about your prayer, but you weren't even thinking what you were praying. In fact, your mind might have been... Yeah, you might have been in Hawaii, thinking about, your upcoming spring break vacation. Yeah? So this poor person, rather than intruding on your prayers, is actually an emissary to remind you that you're not even praying. And if you're repulsed by the way he looks, you should think about the fact that that's probably how you appear to Hashem. Your clothing represents the things that we do, which is like the clothing that we become, our spiritual clothing that we're involved with. It's disheveled, it's torn, it's full of holes, there are rags, it's smelly, it's dirty. Our mitzvahs are lacking, yeah? And our mouth that we're speaking to God with, emitting the words of prayer, might be perfectly clean. We brushed our teeth before we're going to the kotel, but it's foul with the smell of lashon hara and of slander and of improper speech and of lewd discussions and all of those things. And here we are, like that beggar, commanding and demanding God, give, give, give. And indignant over the fact that he's disturbing our prayer, which we're not even thinking about when we do so. So, of course, this person should not be interrupting other people to pray. But if it happens that he does, personally, I found it very helpful to remind myself, rather than getting indignant about what I was praying, can I really say that I was praying properly? And what was I really thinking? And if I wasn't thinking about the prayers, right, then I certainly have no reason to be upset about this person. On the contrary, I should thank him, feel thankful that he's reminding me that I should actually pray. And that if I was praying without thinking about it, then I'm no better than this bum who's coming and interrupting me in the middle of my prayers. By appearing before Hashem like a bum asking for things when I don't even think about what I'm saying. I don't even approach him respectfully. And so, I think these types of scenarios, if we just kind of like stretch our thinking and do a little bit of creative thinking, can help us actually literally be better people. And he concludes here by saying, V'yisrachek mikol hashgacha ra, and therefore a person should also distance himself from any type of bad providence, some bad event that's taking place. Ukederech sha'ain helyoina bekucha umistakeles tamid elatov. And all of this is in order to emulate the way of God, through which he supervises, oversees the world, always constantly looking to do good for the world. Right? It's referring to the way in which, I guess, in a larger picture, perhaps it would have been better to start off with this idea, but at least now that we've concluded the section, to mention that this is talking about providence. It's talking about God's providence over the world, and God's eye is always operative through the sphere of Keser over all of creation for good, and that's, I think, the comparison here to Keser. Yeah, that just like Keser is like the eye through which God sees and tends to the needs of the creation, so we should constantly be looking with an open eye towards the needs of God's creation. And Einei Hashem El Yirav, the pasuk says that the eyes of God are constantly looking over those who fear Him. But it's not only those who fear Him, really God's providential eye is over all of creation, all of the time. And therefore, just as God gives, looks into and has providential care over and provides for the needs of all of creation, so we should do the same as well and not turn a blind eye to the needs of other people. That would be in the vein of this attribute of Keser, providence. Okay. Let's stop here.